Just
This
wanted to make
conference will
sure
now be recorded.
everybody is aware of that. If you have any trouble through the event or questions that you want and you don't want to interrupt Mike, there is kind of a chat bubble in the upper right part of your screen, so feel free to use that. And I think that's all that I have. So let me just give a brief introduction to today's speaker. Mike Caslin is class of 80. He typically would have been speaking at our reunion weekend because this was when reunion weekend was originally scheduled. So thanks to Mike for just kind of modifying because we had to postpone reunion, and we're glad that he was able to do this for you all virtually. Mike is the founder of the Global Center Social Entrepreneur Network Foundation. As I said, he's the member of the class of 80. He just told me that he was a 4-sport athlete, which is almost inconceivable in this day and age. He played cross country, tennis, basketball, and baseball as a student at Manhattanville. And he was also a student representative to the Board of Trustees during his time. And with that, we'll get to know a little bit more about Mike during his presentation. So I'll hand it over to you, Mike.
Great, Polly. Thank you. And thanks, everybody. It's wonderful to see you. And I think to start off, I know some of us in these past few weeks and months may have felt a moment or two of demoralization, destabilization, immersion in a crisis of all ranges. And in essence, seeking to, seeking to get back to normal, and so my mindset is now at the point of getting back to better. That we have a chance to create a more perfect union nationally, and there's a whole bunch of work there. And we have a chance to act on a lot of issues that we care about. The thing I love about social entrepreneurship is that it's a medium and almost like a performing arts way to take your passion and purpose and build what's called in MBA parlance a business model that is, quote, sustainable. So there's probably 2,000 MBA buzzwords that I've gained over the years from teaching at Babson College, getting my MBA up there, having the grounding of Manhattanville College in economics and political science. But the big thing is about what do you want to act on? And so I would say this exploring your social entrepreneur within is a very personal journey. And going back to my own journey, somehow I always wanted to help people. I never quite figured out the way to do it for quite a while through my teen years. Worked a lot of jobs. I think I just looked up, I was making $2.60 working as a gas station attendant a year after high school, and got a call to visit Manhattanville College, and that changed my life. And it changed my life because of people there and because of the learning and the enlightenment. So, to start off, I think there's a great perspective here that is, entrepreneurship is a way to act on the world, to see opportunity and pursue it. Social entrepreneurship is actually a more accountable, a more higher standard. We define social entrepreneurship as an entrepreneur who acts with purpose for people, profit, planet, and place. We call it the 4 Ps. That's profound because there are many economic theories and many economic schools of thought where profit is primacy, if you will. And we think it needs to be much more balanced and to put people first and to have profitability, sustainability, and to be stewards of the environment and to look at how we're building up a community as opposed to offshoring it. So that's the first thing. Before I get any further, I wanted to just go through our attendees today and find out 2 things. So, why on a beautiful Friday would you make the time to join us? What's your motivation? And what's the takeaway that you want? I'd love you to be involved with this because I want to work for you on this chat. So maybe we'll just go through the roster and start with, I'm just seeing in picture order, start with Frank. and then we'll go to Karen and Stephanie and move through. So Frank, thanks for making the time. What's making you patch in today, and what's one takeaway maybe that you're hoping for? Oh, I think you're on mute. Okay. I can, Polly, can you hear me? Hello? So
this is Cindy Jones, Ferguson.
Okay, great. So Frank, somehow I was off the grid on that. So if we could just go back with Frank, and if I could hear you again, please.
Frank is still muted from what I can see.
Okay, so Frank may be muted. Okay, Karen, do you want to try?
Sure.
What makes you arrive today? What's your motivation?
It sounded just like a very interesting topic to me.
Okay.
Given the current environment and some of the discussions I've been having with friends and colleagues about what can we do to move this conversation forward, and what can we do to make this a better place where we're not always at fisticuffs and we're not always saying, oh, you don't get it. I want to get it, and I want to be that person that maybe helps other people get it too.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you. Stephanie? Oh, Karen, could you share maybe one takeaway that you'd like just to get out of the call today?
I think one takeaway I would like is something that I could actually start doing right away.
Okay. It's very entrepreneurial. Get to action. It took a research project of 35,000 businesses for one of my mentor professors, Jeff Timmons, to actually say it's about creativity in action.
Yeah.
So thank you. Thanks for that emphasis. Okay, we'll work on that.
Okay.
Great, Stephanie.
So I've been teaching small business management for about 24 years at Pace University. So I've worked with about 400 prospective business owners, and a lot of them had social entrepreneurship ideas. And I've had a small business myself for about 30 years. And I guess the past, I would say 5 or 10 years, I've started to think, especially working with some of my colleagues in nonprofits and others who have kind of that mission of social entrepreneurship, it started to pull at me. So I guess it's been an emerging interest. My client base is a lot of healthcare. So I've always kind of been exposed to helping people, those kinds of things, although we've been on the business management side, but still there's the people side. So I guess personally, the one thing to get, there are a lot of things I hope to get out of this. First of all, is the path to not so much, I guess the path of arriving not only at the idea, but at actually getting the business up and going, the types of things that you need and how it might differ from the other businesses that I've worked with.
Right. Okay, great. I've got 4 topics there that I can talk to, and we can brainstorm on that. Fantastic.
Great. Thank you.
Great. And Frank, I don't know if you've unmuted or not, but if you have, love to come back to you, or we can try a little bit later.
There
we go. Okay.
I think first of all, Mike has actually done some work at the school my son graduated from, Wheaton College. He's actually created a program down there with the president, Dennis Hanno. Number 2, Mike was very kind enough to talk to my son, providing his insight onto business. So I thought that was important. And number 3, I'm not in the small business world. I've actually been in asset management brokerage, and I'm a management consultant right now. And what I find interesting about the market as a whole is that there is a big focus on social consciousness. It's called ESG, environment, social, and whatever. Mike probably already knows it. But what they're finding now is that stocks that are focused on that are actually outperforming the the benchmarks of the other things. So I thought that was interesting. For I'm actually in the process of building a business.
cool.
So to the
Yeah.
extent that I could, work with another lens, which I don't have because I'm stuck on the profit side.
Yep.
So
Got
I
it.
need to be more Manhattanville-ish.
Well, it's a type of thing where, and I'll talk about it. If you don't have the code, you can't code. And if you don't have that perspective on a sustainable community or sustainability, and the intersection of economic justice and human justice, it's hard. You just don't know. And so that's something we can talk offline and certainly follow up on. And it'll be a pleasure. Yeah, we have we for GSEN Foundation, we started out basically, in my journey, I grew up in a Union Irish Catholic family in Queens. And my social contract was be good, do good in school, someone will give you a job. Maybe you can get out of Queens on a basketball scholarship or support. But that was it. No one ever said about owning your own job, owning your own destiny. And then I read a single book when I was working in Washington, D.C. years later called The Spirit of Enterprise. And that really opened up a whole nother world of the entrepreneurial process. Spirit of Enterprise is written by George Gilder, who's a thinker and a visionary. And it changed my life. I was like, I put the book, after I finished the book, it was a used book at DuPont Circle bookstore, but man, it's still on my desk almost 35 years later. And the idea was that the role of the entrepreneur is more than just an assumption within Keynesian macroeconomics. The role of the entrepreneur is profound in what he or she does and what can be created. This is a highly artistic and creative process. And I'll come back to that. But thank you, Frank.
Hey, Mike. I also,
yes.
on a second note, John Racy now lives in Nashville, Tennessee. So we're going to start the Manhattanville Club.
Oh, fantastic! And actually, one of the students I taught at Babson College in 2007, Jamie Kent, is now a rising Tennessee, Nashville performer. And Rolling Stone featured. And he has a band called Jamie Kent and the Options. He's kind of a millennial Bob Dylan-ish type guy. And he's just joined the GSEN board. And so we're coming to Nashville, my family, to visit with him and a few other musicians. And he's seeking to change the world through music. And in his senior week at Babson, after taking my course, he came up to me and said, "Hey, Professor Kaz," he's a very cool guy. And he's like, I got this State Street Bank offer, but I just started my band and I love it. What should I do? And I had the disclaimer, well, I'm not going to get in trouble with your parents for spending, at that time, $60,000 a year to pass on State Street. But I said, you have a unique chance. And he went ahead and Jamie actually created a bus tour. He did research and went to every bar that Bob Dylan played in across the country. And he's now into his career and a rising star and statesman. So we're actually going to come, my family and I are going to come to visit with him. So Frank, can't wait. That'll be great.
Yeah, let me know. Maybe we can
we'll get together
as well.
Fantastic. Okay. I love it. Ferguson, do you have a first, or is that your first or last name?
Hi, Mike. It's Cindy Jones. I graduated.
Oh, Cindy.
Class ahead of you. How are you?
Very good, thank you. Wonderful to see you.
Me?
I do. And your dad as well. Just fantastic. Yes. Wow.
I basically have spent my career in universities, both in admissions, like my dad, and also in internship programs. And while I loved that, I think I've always been an entrepreneur at heart. So your topic just sounded really interesting to me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm retired now, so who knows?
Fantastic. Well, I would posit to you, quoting Steve Jobs, that true artists never retire, number one. And number two, from your what's called, the Malcolm Gladwell tipping point, 10 years or 10,000 bytes of data, your perspective on just the issue of internships is profoundly vital today. And we have a social venture intern program where students intern on their own social venture, and it's going to be scaling significantly. And I would like to talk to you further about that. And
awesome.
So what's interesting sometimes is we feel that we should maybe not so much look upon our past and not so much dwell on what we know, but that we have to stake out and go far afield to create something new. And that's actually counter to the entrepreneur who succeeds. It's the deep basis of insights that create the gap analysis, that creates the aha. And so it's really interesting. And sometimes you want to jump to something else completely, but the magic, it's kind of like Paulo Coelho, you know, the alchemist, the magic is right in the courtyard, you know, and so it'll be fun to talk that through. And any takeaway for you?
I just want to know more about what you do.
Okay.
And entrepreneurship in general.
Sure. Excellent. And I'm gonna go through a historical definition of entrepreneurship, which is really fascinating as well. Who else is on the line? Karen and Kitty. Okay. Margaret and Mary Beth and Stephanie. Okay. So if we go with Karen next. Okay. Hi, Karen.
Hi there.
Hey.
Happy reunion weekend. This is our reunion.
Yeah, go team. Absolutely.
Yeah, so for the last however many years, obviously we know, I've been in communications, accredited in public relations, etc. Mostly nonprofit organizations for the last, I don't know, 20 years, probably the healthcare industry.
Okay.
And what I'm currently doing as well is getting an MFA in creative writing. So I'm hoping to get that finally in January. And the plan for me is obviously to finish a book that I'm working on, a nonfiction, and maybe teach, maybe something, I'm not sure what.
Good.
So I think partly the, why be on this call. Number one, I wanted to kind of hear what you're up to.
Great, thank you.
Had some emails and conversations. Kind of, Cindy said, that aha moment, the next steps, trying to figure out what's on the horizon.
Cool. I call that, certainly in my life, the transformational conversation. Like you may have 5 or 10 of them in your life, and you may not even know it when you have it. But there's something there that's pretty magical. And for GSEN Foundation, we're dedicated to basically democratizing key wealth creation knowledge. And wealth, again, is abundance of things you value, first of all. And the abundance of things you value could include financial capital, but it also must include social capital and intellectual capital and character capital and community capital and environmental capital, all these things that add up. I was working on a project up at Boston College and saw one chart. I'm kind of a chart guy or a visual learner, and it's called the STAR chart. That's the Sustainability Tracking and Rating chart. And it's developed by probably 70 different city government centers. And it was like, everybody's talking about sustainability, but what is it? How do you know where you are in it? And this STARK chart, and you can Google it, basically is in MBA parlance, oftentimes they talk 2 by 2, like 2 boxes over 2 boxes. Like that's how you do a lot of analysis. This is an 8 row, 8 column visual, where it basically says, you pick the spot anywhere in the world, any zip code that's in crisis right now. There are up to 60 different boxes that need to be moving forward together. And we all as entrepreneurs can't do all the 64 boxes, but we can do 3 of them. We can do 2 of them. We can do 1 of them. And so, and part of our courseware is that we've taken this like kind of master's sustainability level type chart and brought it all the way down to the intersection of this chart. Who am I? Why am I? What do I know and need to know? And how do I act on it? And all of a sudden you start to see that what you do matters within a much bigger context than just your business card, than just your, QuickBooks online account, than just your personal cash flow. You have your profound influence. So if you can Google it, I think it was one of the most powerful moments I've had in 40 years of business and consulting, is to look at that chart. And it was at the Urban Ecology Institute. I was working with Max Kennedy and Charlie Lord, an Echoing Green Fellow. And the idea was to make cities more sustainable, and we started a thing called the Boston Tree Campaign, and which led to a rivalry with the city of New York, and New York started the New York Tree Campaign. And so the idea was make everything better now, and instead of just running away, engage where you can and where you are. So Karen, I look forward to us, spending more time together. We're at the GSEN Foundation is entering its 6th year. I worked on, and this is just for everybody, I was teaching for 14 years in higher ed. I was an entrepreneur. I did corporate venture capital and turnarounds. And I found that helping people help themselves is one of the greatest joys. Helping people help themselves. So that means I don't tell them to wear a white button-down shirt. I don't tell them to do what I do. You evoke what's already there. And that's kind of the joy of the education and entrepreneurial process. So I'm just going to get a few more feedback if we can. So Kitty's on, Margaret, Mary Beth, and Stephanie. Okay, Kitty. And Kitty, if you're able to participate, great. If not, we can move to Margaret. Okay, let's try Margaret.
Hey, Mike.
Yes, hi.
This is Margaret, but I'm also known as Peggy.
Oh, okay.
I'm Peggy Scollins, your friend.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm still trying to swim as good as you, but I'm hopeless. Yeah. Fantastic, Peggy. This is great. So nice. Holy. Who was that in the background?
I don't know.
Okay. Fantastic. So, Peg, you're coming in on at least hopefully and on a beautiful Friday afternoon. What's motivating you to connect, and what do you want to go?
Yeah, I'm down here in Texas, Houston, Texas.
Awesome.
And it is a beautiful afternoon in Houston. It's like one of those rare, beautiful days. So
yes.
I'm me to come in from my backyard to listen to you speak on a rare, beautiful day. So, hey.
Oh, my God. I am honored. I am honored. Thank you so much. I will. Yeah, I am.
So anyway,
what do you want out of it? Like, what's
actually, I tuned in to hear you speak, to see what you had to say.
Okay.
And to see what's going on with you. Right now, I run my own swim school. I am an entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. I have a swim school out of my backyard, and I teach a lot of nonverbal and autistic children how to swim. Mm-hmm. And I have a blast. And just, this morning I was in the pool on a beautiful morning. I got out a couple of hours before this conversation. So yeah, that's what I'm doing. I'm an entrepreneur.
It's fantastic. And you're, God bless you. And I think, what we talk about social entrepreneur is that you actually start to become even more aware of what you can be accountable for. And that's, you're serving a special population. So you got the people part of it, right? You're not only serving, paying customers, you're serving students with special needs, or special gifts. You're able to cover your costs, and all of a sudden there's your price, and then your costs, and then your surplus or profit or loss. It doesn't, it took me a long time to really enjoy a balance sheet and an income statement, and to understand that it's the ultimate soap opera. That when you start to dig in, you start to see that really numbers are like 3-dimensional representations of 30 dimensions of humanity in a company. And so what you're spending your money on or not really tells a story. So that's very cool, Peggy. And any takeaway that you want to try and get out of this?
I'm just going to listen to what you have to say, absorb it, and I'll let you know. If I can bring anything I do back to this conversation, I'll be sure to let you know.
Fantastic. And, given the fact that, again, I worked for almost 4 years to create the foundation, and that was a struggle. And then I found a sponsor who's stuck with us for 6 years and really helped us build the capacity to help people discover their social entrepreneur within. So it's like it's so cool. It's really a joyful business. It's not, and just to emphasize to everybody, this is not like a utopian capitalism path. And I've done business all over the world. I've done business in China. I've been to Russia 7 times. My wife, Irina, is from there. I've seen the promise and the limits in India of typical agrarianism systems, socialist communist systems, and capitalist systems. So this whole thing of social entrepreneurship is not utopian capitalism by any stretch. It's about how can you create, move to a better place, not back to normal. We can't afford back to normal. We have to get to better. And then we have, so Pega, we'll look forward to, for many of you on the call, we can actually have a Manhattanville cohort where we can just team up every week or twice a month and help each other succeed. We actually, our alumni program for people who go through our, certifications is called Club Theos, GSEN Club Theos. And it's basically, the Theos means help each other succeed. Something radical, like you don't have to struggle alone. You don't have to be the sole Christ on the cross martyr. Like sharing your pain, sharing your insights is kind of just really more fun. And so we have a growing club on LinkedIn, and the idea is to take knowledge and power and contacts and connections and help each other. So with Polly's help, if there's interest, we can have a standing cohort of our folks, because basically it's taken me 40 years to learn the code. Like most of the stuff that we teach is between 500 to 1,000 new keywords. And so all of a sudden, if you don't know the keyword, you can't think. And if you can't think, you can't start to change your behavior. If you don't change your behavior, you're in a very, very stuck spot. And it happens literally. We work with students from 16 to 60. We work with students now in 12 different countries and 12 US states. And what the folks we work with come and say, like, first of all, inspire me. Like, I want to believe in something that's better than normal. Teach me, like, what code don't I know? And then support me. Like, how can I get to a better place? We call it get to wow. Like, it's more fun to live like trying to get to wow than get to ow, And so I was in all my journeys of McKinsey studies and all this, and HBS case studies and all these different schools I've worked with. I'm like, how do we have a philosophy for a foundation that builds a culture? And so, that's something, for those of you who are starting to grow something, our value statement and culture statement is very simple. Family first. Boom. No questions. If somebody's sick, if somebody needs something, you take care of your family. Then we have Team Theos. Help together, help each other succeed. If you're operating on that principle, there's really no confusion. And then we have the final is get to wow, fix the ow. Always perform above expectations. If your P is greater than your E, it's happy face. People are saying wow. Like, getting to a wow is psychic income. And it's something that really, really is valuable. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. I'm going to come back also to the definition journey of entrepreneurship, and something that's really most of us don't learn. And even when I was getting my MBA at Babson, late in career, average age of students was about 20 to 30 years younger than I was. For the first 4 or 5 courses, I was really pissed at myself. I'm like, how do I not know this shit? And then all of a sudden, I started to have some personal forgiveness, realizing I never talked to anybody about it. No one I knew the code of wealth and value creation at that level. We were really part of a social contract and an education system, which was be good, do good in school, and someone will give you a job. Like no one really talked about the other way. And who else do we have here? Mary Beth and Oscar and Stephanie, maybe Mary Beth, yeah.
Sure. Hi, Mike. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
So yeah, I guess your tagline grabbed me. I saw it last night. Get ready for post-COVID economy. Economy's been on the forefront of my mind.
Yep.
And I hired onto IBM right after graduation. I graduated in '84.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I'm concerned about the job market.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I like the intersection of kind of your financial and your social entrepreneurship. As an IBM manager, I've been in some recent calls lately about race relations. We have a pledge we rolled out within our company called capital EMB in parentheses race, called Embrace. And employees are taking the pledge.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm certainly interested in the economics and also the advocacy piece. What I'm looking to gain today is really insight into both those areas.
Cool. Thank you.
And you guys were doing some shout outs to Nashville before for anybody down there. Joel Donick lives there too.
Oh, very cool. Okay, fantastic. And then Oscar and Stephanie. Okay. And then Oscar, we can come back to you. You can jump in any time, and Kitty as well. And Stephanie?
I've already given my spiel.
Oh, okay, fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, unless
Great.
there's another Stephanie on here.
No, there's that's fine. Great. I'm just going through the drop down.
Can I jump in 1 second? The Joe
Sure.
Donick story. I used to watch. I went to Vanderbilt and I watched his son play basketball. And one day I saw this guy with terrible pants on. They were plaid, and I said, "Oh my God, you're Joe Donick." So.
That's so cool. That's so cool. Well, let's get into some shop talk, and maybe Polly, you can monitor kind of. There's that little icon at the top of your screen that's like chat, and you can send emails. And oftentimes, if you want to send it personally, you can send it personal to the organizers, but you can type in questions, I think, in the chat box, and Polly can kind of broker that. We can use that for even future discussions. So a couple of macro things to think about, that really capitalism, we're in a democratic capitalist world in America. That's number one. We're not in a statist communist world in China. Number two, there's just different systems of control and decision making, and what I would say speed and layers. Have any of you watched the movie Chernobyl? If you haven't, again, my wife is from Moscow. I've been to Russia 7 times. It's unbelievably wonderful country. But Chernobyl talks about the end of the Soviet Union and shows you kind of what the social contract was and what was going on. And the big thing was the certain systems of who's promoted. Like who was running the local nuclear power authority was a person who was like working in a shoe factory, but just was a political appointee. So there's different ways of decision making and how things are distributed. The first reference to entrepreneurship, kind of from an economics point of view, was in the 1700s by an economist by the name of Jean-Baptiste Say. And he used the phrase entrepreneur, which is a French word, as adventure, risk-taking, explorer, really the root of that, to enter. The entrepreneurial capitalist. So he was the first person to fuse kind of, quote, capital with entrepreneur, like a person who takes time to look at things. And just a quick side note, and this is something that is counterintuitive to many of us who come into the field, that a successful entrepreneur is not an entrepreneur who wakes up every morning and gives and says, I'd love risk. I want more risk and uncertainty. It's a successful entrepreneur is an entrepreneur who manages risk, who doesn't deny it, and is not destroyed by it, and is not intimidated by it, and also is not delusional about it. So that's the kind of the risk management and risk avoidance is actually something that's another buzzword, quote, or concept taught at Babson. Babson, as a school, was a nice family business school for 50, 60 years, and they had one professor who had an instinct to teach about entrepreneurship in the late 70s. So we hear John Baptiste Say saying capitalistic entrepreneurs in England. That was the first reference, and it was basically using capital to go out to other parts of the world in the United Kingdom. Now, the capital, some of our, when you hear that word, it has many connotations to money, but capital's root word, and I think this is what's fun about teaching and learning, is the root word of capital is kaput, which is a head of cattle. All of a sudden, at one point, wealth was measured by heads of cattle. And kaput, how many kaputs, right? Budget, when we hear budget, sometimes our eyes glaze over and like, oh my God, what's this about? Budget is really about a bag of coins for a home. It's really about the value that's being managed at a home. So if you start to simplify this, then you realize that these are all new ways of thinking about words we've heard before. Like when we hear capital, we have no idea from where that came from. So jumping forward from kind of the 1700s, it went through kind of mercantilism and a whole variety of other activities. And if we jump into the early 1900s, we start to see the definition of entrepreneur arising. And entrepreneur typically arising in the mid 1900s was a person who starts, owns, and manages a small business. So that's kind of the second evolution of the understanding. The third came with one of my mentors from Babson College, Dr. Jeff Timmons, who wrote a book called New Venture Creation while he was teaching at Harvard Business School. And he and another mentor of mine both seem to be kind of rebel Jesus type folks. Both were threatened with tenure loss because they were wasting their time on this field of entrepreneurship in the late 70s and social entrepreneurship in the mid 90s. That's with Dr. Greg Dees. I don't know how, but I had the blessing to work with both of them and to meet with them and talk and start to get in their mindset and their wheelhouse, their OODA loop. How are they observing the world? How are they orienting and deciding and acting? So the mindset for Jeff Timmons now, this is in the late 70s, early 80s, is that an entrepreneur is a person who perceives and pursues opportunity without having all available resources under their single control. Wow, is that a mind blower? To perceive and pursue an opportunity, but not have it all nailed down, not have it all owned solely by you. And so that's another step of evolution in kind of the mindset. So then all of a sudden, if you see an opportunity and you want to pursue it, what does that mean? That means you have to leverage resources. Leverage resources means you start to have to map an ecosystem around you, a personal network of who can help you. And it gets complicated and it gets simpler, like common sense at the same time. Who is around you that can help you to make something happen? Now, when I started to get into this space, I had spent about 20 years in nonprofit work and probably 15 years in for-profit, ranging from corporate turnarounds and venture capital and private equity, and was trying to really understand how this all worked. And there's many myths Like, for example, many people might say, I want to help people. I don't care about money. And so I want to go into a nonprofit. Well, that's not a fully thought out concept, because as Mother Teresa's CFO once said, no margin, no mission. If there's no flow, you have a hobby, which is totally fine. Like I have a hobby that I'm a section hiker of the Appalachian Trail. Humbly, I'm doing like 100 miles a year just because of time, but I want to complete it. However, the Appalachian Trail's nearly 2,000 miles long, and at my rate, it's going to be like 2050. But I love it so much. I don't want to start an Appalachian Trail business. I don't want to be on the trail for 8 months at a time doing, through hikes. So I've made a decision about a passion I have that I like to hike, but I don't need to do it as a business. So there's things that you can do that you love that are hobbies and are nurturing and change your gears and renew you, kind of a John Muir, go to the mountains, and, and also kind of the Bard of the Catskills, that nature heals us. So with all that, then I started to think about, okay, if I want to help people, what's going on in helping people through business? Again, because at certain times, business has shitty PR, and a lot of it deserved, and much of it misunderstood. And so, if it's not just about the primacy of profit, what else can it be about? And so all of a sudden you start to, and we're hearing words now like circular economy, regenerative economy, zero waste economy, local economy. These are all concepts and thinking and writings that are coming our way. What you're seeing across the country is both, in my opinion, is an intersection of public health, civic health, and economic health. And we either can improve it or it will destroy us all if we don't get it right. I've worked in Rikers Island Prison with folks that, middle-aged guys who are drug dealers for a career because they can't get into a different track. I've worked with contract killer teenagers who just kill people for money. I've worked in the largest and most notorious slums of Europe, in Scotland and in Ireland in particular, and also in many parts of India and China. So the thing I see is it's not so much about your ethnicity and your melanin count. It's about your knowledge and what you know. And at any one time, again, if you're out of the loop on 500 to 5,000 keywords, all of a sudden that impacts your values, it impacts your decision making, it impacts your behavior. If you look at the tragic death of Eric Garner in Staten Island, I believe, he was stopped because he was selling single cigarettes to make money. It was a New York City Council law. You can't break up a pack and sell them individually. So all of a sudden there was an economic issue tied into this political and public issue tied into the police encounter. So all these things do intersect, and we can talk a lot more about this, but I do think there is a tremendous intersection between public health, social health, and economic health. One of the things that kind of gave me an aha, having thought about this space for nearly 3 decades, is the Journal of American Medicine came out this year and basically found that for every town in America where an auto factory closed, opioid deaths were like factorially higher, just skyrocketing higher between that. So there's some links here that what you do with your ideas really matter, and they can influence people. And there's a whole bunch of conversation, and again, we can even talk about who are the people who've had encounters, and what were the police trained in, what were the kind of community people trained in, and what was the economic factor that contributed to this escalation of destruction. So the the jumping forward, I did a global field scan of all social entrepreneurship initiatives because I thought business has got to be better than what it is now. In the 80s, most of the macro Harvard economic theorists said there was no role for small business, that everything would be a big business. They're totally wrong. The explosion of small business and entrepreneurship really accelerated in the late 80s into the 2000s. I've worked and lived and managed through 7 recessions. This COVID impact is at a league of its own, and we all have to help each other through it because there's no playbook that's really simple. And I had my first business during the recession, the Reagan recession of '84, where it was, I think, 22% mortgage interest rates and 19% inflation rate and 15% unemployment rate. And that was nothing as far as difficulty compared to what we have now. So if you're thinking we are in a tough spot, we sure are. In the field of social entrepreneurship, believing that entrepreneurship can help people, can make money, can steward the environment, and can build a local economy stronger, it's an emerging field. And I went to a global summit back in 2015 and was relieved to find out that it's still an emerging field. There are 45 academic definitions for social entrepreneurship. So rather than wait for everybody just to duke it out in the academic arena, we decided to focus on our foundation on who, instead of what is social entrepreneurship, who is the social entrepreneur? And we came up with an entrepreneur who acts with purpose for people, profit, planet, place. So that's the journey of kind of my understanding and my engagement of seeing the role and the intersection of business and the world. Part of what a number of you might want to think about is kind of something I just read from an eighth grade valedictorian speech yesterday. Reach high for those stars that are hidden in your souls. Dream deep, for every dream precedes the goal. And that was penned by Mother Teresa. And so, again, reach high for those stars that are hidden in your souls. Dream deep, for every dream that precedes the goal. Now, from an economics point of view, there's this thing, that little phrase there, that are hidden in your souls. From an Austrian economic point of view, under Schumpeter and Hayek and Mises, those stars that are hidden in your souls is your unique dignity, capacity, and role in the world. And that is everything. And so that's why in a quote social entrepreneurship course, what's the first question that we have is, who am I? That if you can know yourself better and start to explore it with friends, with family, with coaches, with GSEN, all of a sudden you're starting to have a special lens on the world. And that is a profound way of viewing the world. That's again, Austrian economic theory world. A centralized communist world is President Xi just decides what you're going to do for the rest of your life, and you'll just do it. My wife, Irina, grew up in the end days of the Soviet Union, where it was very simple. What are you good at? And we'll tell you where to work for the rest of your life. And oh, by the way, all that will be decided in Moscow. Now, she happened to be great in nuclear physics. She worked at the Nuclear Regulatory Office in Moscow during the time of the Chernobyl meltdown and learned more about Chernobyl through Netflix than she ever learned in the building, which again talks about secrecy, lies, containment of information, and that there's a fundamental fork in the road, that either people have dignity and capacity and ability and potential, or they need to be told what to do and just warehoused. Now, I think I love about Manhattanville is that it helps you understand that we can get to a greater dignity and capacity, and that people have unique insights into the world, and by the way, they're really valuable. So when you start to study entrepreneurs, they've had an ability to be confident in the stars that were hidden in their souls. There's a study that came out recently from Oxford University that for the particular college students and adult learners, there is a growing gap occurring between confidence and action. It's getting farther and farther away. The numbers are profound for all generations. People are demoralized or, quote, losing their moral compass, and their ability to act in and on and for the world is getting further away. So that's something to think about there. As far as social entrepreneur companies, like, again, it's more about what it's not so much about legal structure. I taught a course on legal structure. There's like 17 different legal structures easily. And if you get into the IRS tax code, you're going to blow your mind. Just if you wanted to have a nonprofit, there's like 15 subsections just there. So it's not so much legal structure. And when you start to think about entrepreneurship, social entrepreneurship, it's who are your customers, and are they able to pay, or are they sponsored? That's really another fork in the road. Like Manhattanville College has a blended model. There are students who can pay tuition, there are students who can pay some tuition, and there are students who can't go at all without help. When I left my gas station job in Queens, I was making $2.60 an hour. Paying $400 a year to go to Manhattanville with a New York State Regent scholarship almost, cashed me out twice. Like $400 at that time was a really big deal. Given inflation or devaluation of our money, that's really about $3,200 today. When I taught at Babson, again, Babson, $70,000 a year, 5,500 kids applying, 500 kids accepted, a pretty good shape. Even they have to give out financial aid. And then when I went from Babson to teach at Baruch, which is, teach kids who work full-time and go to school either in the morning, i.e. 7 o'clock, or at night after 6 p.m. $50, $100, $200 would make or break cash out, would force them out. So everybody's got different levels of resources. But again, if we go back to that assumption of dignity and capacity of people, then there's a chance that they can begin to work towards something better. When I was talking recently with Polly and Kitty at Manhattanville, I did go back and found some references to Valiant. And Victor Hugo, who any of you haven't read Les Miserables, it's probably it's certainly the most lauded book in French literature by many, and the word beauty is stunning and powerful. And he has a phrase that I think is very apt for now. The future has several names. For the weak, it is impossible. For the faint-hearted, it is the overwhelming unknown. But for the valiant, it is an ideal time. So there is never a perfect time to kind of believe in yourself, support yourself, and try. But the big thing that I've found over time is if you start now, you'll start to build insights. I'd love to tell you a story about Heather Rotman, who is a student from Wheaton College, senior. She took one of our social venture boot camps, which is an executive ed MBA level type boot camp, 70 hours, Sunday to Friday. She was reclusive, and she slowly stepped out of her shell, and her life is still, kind of like all of us, we're in varying stages of becoming. She was bullied in middle school. She developed trichotillomania. She basically removed all the hair in her scalp and her eyebrows. She wore a wig to class. And in essence, she was signed up by some of her friends in her dorm for our program. Very, very quiet and kind, good person. By the end of the week, she had found her why, which is basically a concept called resilient minds, to stop bullying in middle school, something that she went through. So she didn't go out and try and develop, perpetual motion machine. She didn't try and build an interstellar space station or something. She went to what she knew. And that's a real key part of those questions of who am I and why am I and what do I know? And then need to know, how do you upskill? How do you get more content? Heather basically completed our boot camp, had the final spring semester in senior year, and there was a pitch competition at Wheaton College, and probably 40 kids entered, and she won the pitch competition. That night she came in, she didn't have her wig on. I didn't even know she had a wig on, so I was not totally clued in on that. And she, was like Sinead O'Connor, owning who she was more than ever before in her life. And the best part of the night, besides everybody just like blown away with where she came from, where she was, and what she is hoping to do, were I was standing with a bunch of dudes in the back at one point. And they're like, "Who is that? And who's that girl? And how did she win? And like, how did that happen?" And it was just a poignant moment because the guys had pretty much worked for like an hour on some pitch idea. And she had invested at that point like 112 hours. She was 112 hours ahead of those guys who were wondering, why didn't their 1 hour idea work? So one of the things that I think it's really important is when to get started, start now. I think one idea is, as we teach everybody who comes into the process, and especially if every big company was once before a small company, and before that was an idea. And so a lot of us on the call really are in that stage of what we call social venture formulation, which includes problem identification and solution identification. That's the first step of this journey. And the next few steps, Oscar, I think if you can mute, that'd be great. And then patch in. So here's the steps that no one ever showed me, like a hiking trail. Like, geez, like how do you know where you are if you don't have a map? So the map is really very, very clear to me now at my age and stage. There's the social venture formulation. That's not so much what cool shit do you want to make and do, but what is the problem out there that you're really passionate and concerned for? Heather's was bullying. Other students, Georgia Beatty, one of my students, she's now the largest organic mushroom farmer in Australia. Jamie Kent, his passion is songs that inspire and lift people and address critical issues. Charlie Nichols, his thing was solar powered drip irrigation in Kenya for subsistence farmers so that they don't have to spend all their money on stupid diesel fuel water pumps. So everybody's got a different take on what they're passionate and good at, what they can grow into, and also what needs to be worked on. So in the key stages, there's social venture formulation, which includes problem and solution mapping. Then there's market entry and testing, which at the MBA level, you can just analyze and paralyze out of existence any concept. I'm sure when Manhattanville College was founded, there may have been a tension between starting the school and like, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? Who said you should do this? And so it's part of it is that kind of confidence to action, that permission that the founders of Manhattanville gave themselves, which is very intriguing. Now, you could say, where did that permission come from? It came from their spiritual center, in my opinion. That's why at the middle of this little diagram is who you are, your social entrepreneur spiritual center. Formulation, market testing and entry, then commercialization. You may market test and get feedback and find it's not working. It's never going to work. No one's ever going to buy it, and no one's ever going to sponsor someone to get it. But let's assume you do get that. Then it's commercialization. What commercialization skills and systems do you need? Like, what do you need? Do you need a database? Do you need QuickBooks Online? Do you need financial systems? Do you need team, HR, talent management systems? All of a sudden, you need what's called in the IBM parlance systems of record. You need things that are consistent that people can tap into. So you have market formulation, venture formulation, market entry, commercialization. Then you have scale, early stage growth, then rapid growth, and then you have another stage, sixth stage, which is harvest or evergreen. We're at the forefront of working with the Novo Foundation, that's with Peter Buffett and Warren Buffett's son. It's really thinking about what is the purpose of capital markets and where's it all going. For example, little things like mergers and acquisitions. Capital markets fund a merger and acquisition. What happens is both the companies come together, 90% of the mergers and acquisitions fail. Most of the law firms and CPA firms make their billings and never get clawback for like failed projects. And what happens is, one company comes out on top and the other company is vaporized. And so there's this whole march towards creative destruction at a rate and behavior that is highly dysfunctional. For example, I live in Kingston, New York. I drive through an empty parking lot of IBM, past a giant pile of rubble. If any of you have ever seen 1 million empty square feet of buildings, I drive past it every day. 17 years ago, there used to be 7,000 cars in that lot. And tied to that were probably 140,000 other small businesses. Due to, in my opinion, business mismanagement, political DC mismanagement on policy, WTO and NAFTA, and also kind of very lethargic behaviors, not speed to action. In less than 6 months, 26,000 people who were laid off, and those jobs never came back. And we're seeing that across the country. I think 65,000 factories have been closed since 1990, and approximately 7.5 million jobs have disappeared offshore. So there's now, in addition to a local economy, there's a reshoring process coming, where people want to have supply chain. I don't know how many of you have had Wuhan CV19, but I had it, my wife had it. And the absolute moment of irony was we had 4 thermometers. So I'm like, okay, end of March, early April, everybody's freaking out. You got the Como briefings at noon, you got the Trump briefings in the afternoon. And all 4 thermometers were made in China. All 4 happened to break during the time we had Wuhan. And then we got a 5th one, which again was made in China, and the battery was out. So it was just this really Kafka irony that we're depending on markets and production structures, literally, you could say 30 hours by flight away, but it could be many, many weeks and months away, depending on how stuff is shipped and the wealth that's drained from it. So there again, probably the big thing is every business is a real great struggle. Every startup idea is a passion, and we've come to teach our students, don't fall in love with the solution. Don't fall in love with your idea. Fall in love with the problem you're dealing with. Fall in love with the problem. So with that, I think we can go on for a long time, but I think part of the beauty of our cohort today is captured in Eleanor Roosevelt, where one's philosophy is not solely the choices or uses of words, but it's expressed in the choices we make in our lives. Those choices we make are our responsibility. And so the more you learn, the more you have a chance to make empowered choices. And for some of us, we're motivated to have something that's bigger than us. Others are motivated, just for what's in it for them. I've just found over life that living a life of abundance, if I have and you can get and I can help you get it, we'll both have, and then we can both help each other and help others, versus scarcity. I think that's another fork in the road. Are you going to live a life of scarcity and that you have then and nobody else has, and it just starts to closed down. So with that, I think we've talked about a few things, and I'm certainly open to questions, Polly. And again, for each of you who would like, we've written a book. I've co-authored a book called Get to Wow. It's on Amazon. It's on ebook now as of this past week on multiple platforms. And the idea is to take what, for example, it took me 30 years to get. And also, honestly, when I went to Babson, their MBA fast track programs, like one of the best in the world, that was 2.5 years while working full time, and it's cost me $300,000. Now, that's cool if you can pull that off. But if you're looking at all the people in this array now across the country, they don't have time, they don't have the money, and they don't even know how to get the access to that code. And a lot of I think the behaviors are because of this intersection of public health, social health, and economic health. So I'd love to have some chats or conversation.
Yeah, Mike, we are running a little long, so if we could take questions, but also your video has paused, so I don't know if you can unpause your video.
We can, I think given the time, and given us coming up against the clock, if anyone's interested, we can reschedule another time. I wanted to show a video, 6-minute video. It's on our website. Our website is gcsen.com, and we're a nonprofit IRS approved 501c3 charity, and our mission is to accelerate social entrepreneurship in higher ed and for adult learners, around the world. Period. That's what we're going to do for the rest of our lives. And so we have videos there, which you can see people of all ages starting to think about, how do I make meaning with my life, and how do I make money with money through it, and then who can I work with, who can help me? And that's something that if you have a few minutes to look at the videos, we have a lot of student-centered, college student-centered videos. We also have a video from 2016, which really has the most beautiful class I ever teach. Is a kind of an intergenerational class, literally from 18 to 68 type of range. So I'm sorry, we can, you can feel free to click on that, and we can always come back and do another huddle if that's desired.
That's fine with me if everybody has time, but if if I know we advertise this through 1 o'clock, so if you do have thank you for joining us, but I'll go ahead and start the video now if people are interested.
Or we can hold the video and just have a quick chat and try and wrap in about 8 or 9 minutes.
You know what I could do, Mike, is I could send a thank you to everyone and give them the link to the video. How about if we do that, so we could take some questions from people? Fantastic.
And if there's any interest, Polly, in developing, a cohort, that's kind of academic phrase, a group of us who would want to work together, we can figure that out. That's kind of like people who are in varying stages of becoming with their ideas and social ventures. The big thing is just the social venture is about having all 4 spheres working, and then within that, having all of your personal spheres lined up.
And in looking at the chat, it looks like Stephanie is definitely interested in a cohort, so we have that. And Cynthia asked about the book, and Mike, you had mentioned that we could perhaps make the book available to those who participated today.
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah. We have a book, Get to Wow. It's so cool as a business book because it's completely different. For any of you who have taken multiple business courses or economics courses, it's like 600 pages of just density. What we try to do is take core concepts and just graphic and design it much better and to flow. So I had offered from our foundation to Polly, for anyone who is interested and attended the call, we'd be happy to send us autographed copy over the summer to you, to your home at our cost. And if it has value, you could refer other people to the site. Also, there's ebook options that you can have sooner.
I'm talking and I'm muted, but Karen also said she's interested in a cohort. So
Okay.
Does anybody have any questions for Mike? And if so, you can unmute your microphone. Or I could unmute everybody and see what happens.
And I would, love it if anybody wants to call bullshit on it and why. And if not, why do you think it makes sense? Because we cannot return to normal. We must get to better than ever. Period, in our lifetime. And, this is the best way I've found that you can act with your alignment of your energies and the marketplace.
So Mike, I'm telling everyone in the chat that I'll work with you to make the book available to people who are interested.
Yep. And is there a way, maybe, Polly, that we can do a roster or something, to be in touch? I'd love to follow up with everybody.
So,
emails or whatever.
Okay. So if we don't have any questions, thank you very much, Mike. This was great. And thanks to everybody for spending their Friday lunch hour with us. I think these are very interesting and a great way for people to connect, but also a great way to get some valuable information. So thank you all very much. And I think I might have forgotten to mention, but Mike was selected for a Fulbright Award as the very first Fulbright in social entrepreneurship. So congratulations to Mike on that incredible effort.
Thank you, Polly. It's a team win for sure. If I hadn't had the launch pad at Manhattanville, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have the opportunity to bring, in essence, our emerging thinking on social entrepreneurship to Ireland, in particular the border state of Donegal with Northern Ireland, which is both an impoverished area as well as a high conflict area, and also to be lecturing in Europe next year. So, and this is an emerging field. There's certain fields that the windows are opening, certain fields that the windows are closing, and so I think just for everybody, it's something to be aware of and to use as a tool. Again, we did this specifically for college and grad students, but we're finding the pickup might even be for adult learners who are young of heart and of any age, and that's really cool. That's really cool because we tap into different opportunities and ways to make a living and to make money, and now we have in essence a coherent ability to make meaning in our lives, make money, and move the world to a better place. And who doesn't want to do that? So looking forward to helping our cohort and helping anyone, and especially if you have loved ones, be it again students who have had their summer internships vaporized, seniors who have had their jobs pulled. It's just amazing because I teach a lot of seniors in both the SUNY system as well as at Wheaton College, and it's very, very powerful time. And what we a lot more people need to be empowered to act on the world, and to generate multiple forces of value. So thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay, great.
Thank you. Thanks. Okay. Great, Polly. We'll talk again soon, I hope.
Thanks.
Okay,
Okay. Bye-bye.
great. Thanks, everybody.
Okay.
There we go. So Mike, I'll just follow up with you about the books at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's connect. We're opening up next week. You know,
Okay.
Hudson Valley's open. You know, we're opening up GSEN's office. And if you and Kitty want to come up for for a ride, you know, love to have you up for lunch or something. You know, we're just about, I guess, an hour and 40 minutes north of Manhattanville.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Kitty did follow up with you about, just talking to you.
Yes, great chat, great conversation. She inspired me to get a new book called The Human Condition by an abbot, a Trappist abbot from
Oh, interesting.
from Thomas Keating. Yeah, so that'll be a good weekend read for me.
And I thought she might ask some questions, but it looks like she just hopped off. So
yeah,
told her that you would be talking. So okay.
Fantastic. Yeah, I'd love to kind of blast individual emails to folks just to see, or yeah, that'd be ideal. And kind of, I don't know, is there a Manhattanville LinkedIn community?
There is. There is.
Because maybe this could be a cohort within that community.
Right, exactly.
And then we can start it, and we can start a conversation. And then my dream, and again, this is my, kind of social entrepreneur agenda, would be eventually to get to the point where Manhattanville and GSEN can create a program that can have an alum take our course and sponsor an undergrad to take the course together. And that you build in enough margin so that there's a contribution royalty stream to Manhattanville that goes above the cost of what the program is to deliver, so that it's a fundraiser. It's better than selling, mugs or something and T-shirts. We've had a number of chats with Vassar about kind of a adopt a social entrepreneur program where an alum takes our courseware, does our courses with us with coaching and works on their business, and they underwrite a student, and then they get to know the student. So it's creating this generational bridge across the years. And it kind of, I think, going back to the value of people will support more as they get more emotionally and intellectually engaged. It's that simple.
Definitely.
Yeah. So did we do okay? Did this hit the mark for you?
Yeah. It was interesting to see who actually showed up, because I know we had some recent graduates sign up, but it looks like it was, a cohort around the time that you were at Manhattanville.
Yeah.
And I sent a reminder to everybody who did sign up. So, who knows if they're just working and it just became the wrong time or something like that. But, I hope at the end of your Fulbright next year for a reunion, if we are back on campus, that we can hear an update then.
Absolutely. And it to me, I don't know if it's concrete random or some experiential learner aspect of me, being able to use the medium of social entrepreneurship to act on values and create social and economic justice, it just feels good. It just makes sense, because I worked in Washington for 10 years. I just don't worship at the altar of over 120 federal agencies somehow fixing so much that has to be fixed. That's my own personal experience. So I'd much rather bet on the valiance to do stuff,
Definitely.
Yeah. So this was fun. Thank you. And
thank you very much.
You'll get me. Do you have an Excel file of somebody? Or do you have a file of people's emails or cells?
Yeah. What I'm going to do is I wrote down everybody who attended. So once I get that in, then I can pull out information on who attended and their email addresses. And then if you can just follow up with them about the book, that would be great.
Absolutely. What could we have it coordinated where if you just if I just have the mailing list, from you of their addresses. That way I can just, process it with my staff, over the next
Okay.
few weeks.
Okay.
Like,
I'll double check with them to make sure the mailing address is okay.
Yeah.
But, that shouldn't be a problem.
okay, that's a deal.
That's
And
not a
we
problem.
and we do have a GSend store where people can go on and actually look at the courses and sign up for package courses and be coached by me and our other staff.
Okay.
So we're trying to, now we've gone from kind of an R&D phase of building this out to where we're now able to offer it to more accessible and retail. The first few years, it was solely to products and services for this whole space, built for Wheaton, tested at Wheaton. But the funding was to eventually come to the point where we can scale it.
Mm-hmm.
Where
Okay.
a professor at Keene College in New Jersey just bought Get to Wow Book. And because he just bought the Get to Wow Book, he just signed up for the video course. And because of that, we may be able to insert an entire course into his syllabus over the coming year. So that's kind of, I think, one of the ways we're going to work.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
Great, Polly. Thank you so much. Okay,
Thanks.
cheers.
Have a good weekend.
Okay, you too.
Bye.
Bye-bye. And feel free to share my email with anybody.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
great. Blessings. Have a great weekend. Bye.
Same to you. Bye-bye.
Bye.